Hey, this is TimmyG. Welcome to my quick video on how to use Sidechain Compression in Logic Pro. In this video, I'll go over a little bit about what Sidechain Compression is and how to use it in Logic Pro. Anyway, let's get started. So all Sidechain Compression really is basically you can have a kick drum or a snare drum or whatever you want, trigger it, and any track that has the Sidechain Compression will compress only when the kick or the snare is playing. And this is very useful when you're mastering a track. It basically leaves more room for the kick and the snare when it's playing because everything else gets quieter. And I'll show you guys exactly what that means in a moment. So right now I have my track, this little demo track that I just made, and I'll play it through. And right now there's no sidechain compression going on. It's just all the instruments that you hear, the kick, the snare, the hi-hats, this little track that I call, this instrument that I call hyperbeam, and then my sub bass. And that's all that's going on. And if you can hear, the drums aren't as dominant in the mix as I would have liked them to be. And we're gonna use sidechain compression to do that. So anyway, the first thing that I like to do when I sidechain, and there are many ways to do it, is to go to your kick drum, and then for sends, you can just pick any empty bus. Since bus 1's open, I'm gonna hit bus 1. And because we want this to be our trigger, we don't want bus 1 to have any output. So I'm gonna say no output. And then right here, this says how much of it should go into bus 1. I'm gonna hit Alt and click, and that's going to get me right to 0 decibels. You can adjust this if you want it to hit harder to the compressor or softer, but I usually just keep it at 0. And since bus 1 is our kick, I'm going to do bus 2 for our snare. And I'm going to do the same thing. We don't want an output, and I'm going to hit Alt click to get that right to 0. So now, if I play the track again, it'll sound identical. It's not until we compress, add the compression, until we're actually gonna notice it. So first what I'm gonna do is go to Hyperbeam, and you can see I have all these plugins on there. But what I'm gonna do is add a compressor right here. And this is my default compression. I believe I changed it a little bit. I think the only difference between the regular compression that Logic defaults as and mine is that I turned the attack all the way to 0 and the release all the way down to 5 milliseconds. So basically it's just like when the sound's playing, it's compressing, and when it's not, it's not. And what we want to do here is go over to Sidechain. And the way I do it is I do it through the bus, but in the recent updates of Logic Pro, you can actually do it through the specific instruments, and I'll show you how to do that at the end of this video. But since we did the bus, we're gonna go to bus 1, and it says that kick drum tutorial, that's the name of that kick drum that I made, is right here. So I'm gonna have that be the input. So when I hit play now, whenever the kick goes on, we can see that there's compression going on. And if I go to this graph right here, this is the reduction that's happening. And now I can change this. So what I'm gonna do is go to this meter, and I usually like it to go around -5 decibels, but it really is whatever sounds good to you. So this is just for the hyperbeam right now. So I'm gonna hit play, and what I do is turn up the ratio a bit, maybe in between 3 to 5. And you can kind of hear that the hyperbeam gets a little quieter when our kick is playing. And I might turn the threshold a little bit down, and that gets me right to that 5. But once again, it's whatever sounds good to you. So I'm gonna close out of this right now, and I'm just gonna have hyperbeam and the kick playing right now. And you can hear that it's getting quieter when the kick plays. Now I'm gonna do the same thing for the snare. So I'm going to go to Hyperbeam. I'm going to add another compressor. And what I like to do is just copy this one by hitting Alt and click. And then instead of bus 1, I'm going to go to bus 2. So I'm going to do this again. And since the snare isn't hitting as hard, I'm going to turn the threshold down a bit. And now we can kind of hear the snare a little bit more in the mix. And it's going right to that -5, which is what I prefer. Now I'm going to do the same exact thing to the sub bass. When I'm working on a track, I usually do this to almost every single instrument. Maybe not other drums, like I won't do it to the hi-hats most of the time. But it really all depends on what you want and what sounds good. So anyway, I'm going to do the same thing. And a little trick that I like to do, instead of just having to do that all over again, is I like to go to the mixer. I just hit X to get to this mixer window right here. And these two compressors, I'm just going to copy them by hitting Alt and click right there. And then I can adjust them as I want. So that looks good to me for the sub with the kick. And that's going to be the snare right here. And that's pretty much it for the sidechain compression. And I'm just going to show you what it sounds like without it and then with it. So here's without. And now I'm going to turn it back on. And you can hear that the kick and the snare are a little bit more punchy in this mix. The last thing that I said is what I was promised I would do earlier, and just show you the other way that you can do this. Instead of having everything go through a bus, if you don't want to have this go through a bus, that's totally fine. For instance, if I turn this off to no send, which is totally fine, and I'll do that here, no send. I'm going to go to this hyper beam right here, and now bus 1's not going to do anything. But if I do audio, excuse me, if I do audio and I do kick drum tutorial, that'll do the same thing. And then here, I'll do the same thing. I'll go to audio and go to snare drum. And when I play this, here's the snare. We can see that it's compressing. Now I'd still have to adjust to make it sound good for me, but that's just another way that you can do it. I learned the bus method before this method was available, so I typically still use the bus method, but really it is whatever way you want to prefer to do is the way that you should do it. So that's about it on how to sidechain using Logic Pro's compressor. There's all sorts of sidechaining tips that you can do, but this is just a basic introduction. But other than that, that's about it. If you like this video or if it helped you out, be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or video suggestions, be sure to leave a comment. If you want to see more content like this and check out some of my other DJ and production videos, be sure to subscribe to my channel. Thanks a lot.